By the end of 53 BC, the Gauls and the Romans had been at war for 6 years, and soldiers on both sides wondered if it would ever end. The harvests had failed, making it difficult to provision the armies, and starvation was used as a weapon. An ambitious Julius Caesar had amassed 10 Roman legions to put down insurrections by various Gallic tribes, taking them on one at a time to preserve his army and improve his chances of victory. But now a charismatic leader named Vercingetorix of the Arverni had united the tribes. With success against the Romans, more tribes joined in the rebellion. Vercingetorix defeated Caesar at the Battle of Gergovia, and then moved north to a hilltop fortress where he could continue to provision his army. Julius Caesar, his own army low on supplies, pursued. It was the spring of 52 BC, and what was to follow would be one of the great battles in the history of human conflict. In the mid-1970s, the Avalon Hill Gaming Company produced a board game simulation of the battle. I purchased a copy and played the game numerous times. I found the tactical situation facing the opposing armies to be unique and intriguing, and more importantly, the game was fun. This spring, I felt the game beckoning from the attic and decided to give it another go. The game pieces, known as unit counters, primarily have two numbers, a combat factor and a movement factor, and most of them consist of infantry and cavalry formations. But there are Roman fort and missile units, Roman auxiliaries, and 3 counters that represent the leaders provided for gameplay. Most Roman units are depicted in a less than ideal fire engine red with black printing. The Gallic units are in a light green. The Gallic unit at left is of the Rutini tribe, and he has a combat factor of 7 and a movement factor of 6. Below the Rutini counter is the all-important Vercingetorix counter. Looks like he has a studded helmet with a point on the top and 2 horns sticking out the side. As we review the order of battle, at the top we can see 23 forts the Romans deploy at the start of the game, but which are fixed into their positions. The forts have a capacity to hold 3 Roman units and can fire deadly projectiles up to a range of 3. To the left are the 2 Roman leaders, Caesar in white and his trusted lieutenant, Labienus, in black. Below the 2 leaders are a whopping 10 Roman legions. Along the right of the screen, from top to bottom, are the Roman cavalry, 10 mobile missile units, 5 Numidian light infantry, and some hastily assembled northern Italian recruits. Yeah, and over the years, having this game, a small portion of the game pieces were lost. But not to fear, I have produced units to replace them, some never before seen. Vercingetorix's force, within the walls of Alesia, represents perhaps 70,000 warriors. It is the closest thing to a professional army, as the Gauls would assemble during the Gallic Wars. But it has been weakened by the siege and suffers from a critical lack of supplies. And if you look at the 4 9/6s at the top, you're seeing some of the most powerful combat formations in the game. This force, on its own, even without its departed cavalry, outnumbers the pursuing Roman army. And then there's the Gallic relief force. It is comprised of many very potent infantry units, as well as a very capable Gallic cavalry component. Although the Gauls were feared and respected by the Romans, this force was also hastily assembled, and at least half of them had little or no combat experience. They came off the farms and from the trade houses, and are less aware of what the Romans can throw at them than their Alesia counterparts. But they are a determined host of perhaps 150,000 men. And it looks like I've added a nice little 4/6 Gallic unit at the bottom. Cute. Here is the entire order of battle, with the relief force on the left side, the Romans positioned appropriately in the center, and the Alesia force on the right. Avalon Hill had to make their games affordable, and they did. But the quality of materials provided could be hit and miss. However, this map board really shines. It's very large and reflective of the scale of the battle itself. At its center is the fortified town of Alesia, now known as Alesia. It stands on a plateau, and the brownish ring you see around it are slopes denoting a change in elevation. Around the plateau is a plain and two rivers which run roughly parallel east to west across the map, favoring the town's defenses. When the Roman army arrived, they built strong defensive camps around the town, and Caesar had a decision to make. Either he could assault Alesia, as Vercingetorix was hoping, or lay siege and starve out the inhabitants. After his losses in the assault at Gergovia, he decided to lay siege. He would build defensive works to surround the entire town, known as a contravallation. A Roman legion of that day was to some extent a self-contained entity, and each could operate independently. They were somewhat homogeneous and could be matched up or interchanged to suit the tactical need. In short, they were versatile, strong as a unit, and also effective when broken down into multiple formations. This military organizational structure was a technological advantage, one of many they possessed over their adversaries. Within the legion was a capable engineering component. Making defensive structures and siege works is called investment, and at Alesia in 52 BC, the Romans were not messing around. They began to build a series of palisades and towers to surround the town. In the game, we call them ramparts. Roman engineers were sent out from the camps, as well as combat formations, to protect them, and they went to work. These defenses took about 12 days to construct, and Vercingetorix dispatched mounted raiding parties to harass and impede the construction. But the Romans kept on, because they're Romans. Before the trap is closed, Vercingetorix's cavalry breaks out to go send for help from the other tribes. The Romans complete the inner ramparts, but they're not done with the inner defenses altogether. Also included in this Roman investment package were a trench on the West Alesia plain to hinder forces moving west from the town, and in front of the ramparts, two trenches fronted by a large outer layer of brambles, protruding from the ground and pointing toward potential attackers. Beyond that, there were booby traps, pits in the ground with sharp spikes to impede an assaulting force. After completing the contravallation, Caesar, aware Gallic reinforcements would surely arrive sooner or later, began a series of ramparts outside of the first set to defend against any relieving force. Just before the relieving Gallic army arrived, he completed the outer rampart system, known as a circumvallation. In all, about 25 miles of rampart lines were built, along with other aforementioned defensive goodies. With a huge Gallic relief army now encamped just off the board to the southwest, the Alesia force, now down to quarter rations, prepares for battle. With that, the stage is set. Join me now, won't you, as we play Avalon Hill's Caesar, the epic battle of Alesia. There are three players around this table: the Roman player, the Alesia force player, and the relief force player. The latter have the same goal: to get Vercingetorix through the Roman defenses and off the map. The Gallic players are not to communicate with each other, simulating the lack of communication and coordination that faced the Gauls in the historical battle. The Roman player is set up his forces, which we will examine in detail. But you may notice that there are spaces between the Roman units deployed along the outer ramparts. They can do this because of a concept called zone of control, that, A combat unit exerts a controlling influence on each adjacent hex around it. Any enemy unit entering one of those hexes must stop, ending its movement, and will be required to attack the influencing unit in the subsequent attack phase. Another thing to note about the setup here is that it is non-historical. With the Gallic relief force off the southwest sector, the Romans cannot be attacked in areas on the opposite end of the map for the first few turns. But the Roman player's setup here is one that defends the entire perimeter at the start. He doesn't think the relief force is going to attack in the west, or maybe he's just lazy and doesn't want to have to move a bunch of units around early. And let's be clear here, these are the sectors of the battlefield as referred to in the narration throughout the battle. During gameplay, we'll be zooming in and we'll be moving from sector to sector, so it's important to know where those spots are. Back to the Roman setup now, and there is no command and control in this game. That is, you don't have to maintain a certain proximity between organizational units to maintain fighting effectiveness. The Roman player might be lazy, but here he seems to be tidy. He still groups his units by their legions, all save the 10th Legion. The 10th cohorts are dispersed to certain strong points and to other vulnerable areas around the map. They have an attack factor of 6, whereas all other Roman Legion cohorts are at 5 in strength. The exception is the first cohort of the 10th, which is a 9-9 and is usually stacked with Caesar. Taking a closer look at the Roman deployment now, we see Labienus on the west end, 2 camps there, and look how close the edge of the map is to the ramparts, just a few hexes. As early as turn 2, the vanguard of the relief force could assault this sector. It's scary, and so Caesar is not far away either. 14th Legion is there. There's a couple of mobile missile units. Now as we move to the southwest, we see the 15th Legion. Caesar's there. There's another Roman camp protruding out toward a river. Moving east along the south edge of the map board, we can see the 1st Legion there. There's another Roman camp, a double set of ramparts. Above that on the inner rampart system, there's some light units to defend against the Alesia force, which can get there in one turn. Continuing eastward, there's another Roman camp there. The 7th Legion is there. A lot of forts down here. And forts, as well as being able to, fire missiles, they also connect ramparts, and they act as bridges over the rivers. So that's why you're going to see some of those on the rivers and in these gaps in the rampart. On the east end, you can see the 8th there. There's 2 forts in there, some mobile missile units on the East Alesia plain. Further north, at the river, you can see there's 2 towers there to bridge the rivers and connect the ramparts. And coming up on the northeast sector, we have the 9th Legion. You can see another Roman camp there, a couple of forts. Interesting little river there running diagonal. And it's pretty wide in there. There's a lot of space. Moving west along the north edge, and there's a Roman camp up there. It's a little cut off. We see another double section of ramparts. There's the 11th Legion, and there's the 12th Legion. And there's 2 rivers bisecting basically the whole rampart system there. There's another Roman camp in the inner rampart area there. And as we look into the northwest sector, we can see Mount Ray with the 13th. Lots of extra forts in there. There's a little gap in the ramparts there. It is sort of a weak point, but it looks well defended. And all combat resolutions will be decided with a 6-sided die. As we return to the southwest sector, we're going to check in on the relief force, which is preparing for battle. The birds might be singing now, but they're about to end their song. This relief force is not presently on the map. It's in offboard Zone 1. There are 10 offboard zones, and only the Gallic player can move in these zones, only the relief player. And they're numbered 1 through 10 clockwise around the map. For tracking offboard movement, Avalon Hill provided this less than ideal aid for the Gallic player, which has offboard Zone 1 in the upper left instead of the lower left as displayed on the map. It's unfortunate, and I deliberately stained it with coffee and made it crooked to illustrate my contempt for it. In any case, we'll have to suffer along with it. This offboard chart is kept out of view of the Roman player. The Alesia Force player is also not privy to this view. And depicted here, we can see digitally that the relief force is in offboard Zone 1, and there's a little cavalry detachment there, also in offboard 1. This game provides for 2 days of battle. Each day is called an assault period, and each assault period consists of 12 turns. Gauls go first in each turn, and the offboard movement for the Gauls is done before the onboard movement in the movement phase. So back to the offboard movement chart, and the relief force player has split his force, the larger of which we are going to call the greater outer force, and it is moving from the southwest corner along the south edge of the map board into offboard Zone 10. The lesser outer force is moving along the west edge of the map board in a northerly direction, and it looks like he's left a cavalry detachment in Zone 1 that's unmoved. And for onboard movement on turn 1, we can see that the Gallic player has moved a significant amount of cavalry onto the board to the river. When you land on a river, you have to stop your movement, and it's for the turn, and you can't move again until your next movement phase. But when you do get your next movement, you can go either way. Defense is also doubled on the river. And it's nice of the Gallic player to parade his cavalry out there. And just so I could give the example of the river, we can see Caesar looking on with interest there. There's no combat to be resolved here in the Gallic attack phase, and the Romans make no move. Looking back at the offboard movement, it's turn 2, and the lesser force is traveling up to the northwest corner. The greater outer force is moving along the south edge of the map board. And you might notice that the Gallic relief force player is leaving behind cavalry units in the spaces that he's vacated. He wants to show a presence in these spaces because the Roman reconnaissance rules, we're on basic reconnaissance rules. There are some advanced reconnaissance rules, but we're not playing by those. And so the only thing the Roman can tell about the offboard zones is that there's a presence of a unit or more, one or more units. So as far as the Roman player knows, there could be the entire force virtually in offboard Zone 2, ready to assault in the west. Now for the onboard Gallic movement, the two cavalry split off, go back off of the map board to follow their parent forces. And the Romans, for their move, make a couple of minor adjustments. You can see in the northwest there's a cavalry that moves up from the camp to the outer ramparts, a mobile missile unit shifting a little toward the east off of Mount Ray. And in the southwest, Caesar actually moves 4 hexes westward. He wants to be in range in case there's still a massive assault on the west end. It's turn 3 now, and it's time for Gallic offboard movement. You can see that the lesser outer force now has moved into offboard Zone 4. It's actually gone up around Mount Ray in the northwest and is now moving eastward along the north end. Greater outer force is moving off the south edge of the map board toward the east and has almost completed that transit. And that completes the Gallic movement phase there, and the Romans make no move. We're on the eve of turn 4, and the Gallic relief player is about to move pretty much all of the lesser outer force onto the map. And in the southwest, he's going to move about half of the greater outer force onto the map as well. And so we're just going to go right into the Gallic onboard movement, and we'll look at the offboard movement later. In the north, and the lesser outer force has crashed into the northern ramparts. The Gallic forces enter the outer works, adjacent to the Roman units, up against the ramparts. The practical effects of these outer works are that each Gallic unit that enters the outer works under Roman zone control has a 1 out of 6 chance of being eliminated. Without that Roman zone of control, Gallic units can pick their way through with no loss. One of the 2 trenches up against the ramparts is filled with water, and cavalry is prohibited, no matter what the zone of control is, from entering the outer works. So in this first contact with the outer works, the Gauls lose 3 units out of about 23 checks, and that's almost 2,000 men. Since the Gallic player can still move, he fills in all 3 of those slots so as to replace the lost units. Roman missile fire occurs during the Gallic movement phase. It can happen at any time as the Gallic players move their forces in range. This long-range capability includes the forts and 10 mercenary units, 5 slingers from the Balearic Islands, and 5 archers from Numidia. They have a range of 2 and can fire once per turn at each range, subject to target availability. Missile units can disrupt or eliminate the target, or there can be a no effect result. A high die roll is desirable for effect. So we will look in on the turn 4 missile fire in the north, and on the left you can see archer firing at range 2, and it's a disrupt result. And in the center, there's a slinger there firing at range 2, and that's a no effect. And on the right, the tower fires at range 3 and does get a disrupt. And units that are disrupted cannot attack, they can't move, they can't exert zone of control until the next turn. Moving now to the southeast, and we're going to look in on the Gallic movement here, courtesy of the greater outer force. They have moved onto the map. It looks like the only contact here is going to be to assault the tower in the southeast corner. But they've also moved units onto the ridge, overlooking the Alesia plain. Around the tower, they've got 7 units hitting the outer works, and there are no losses there. But even before some of them can reach the outer works, they are subjected to all manner of projectiles from the 2 forts. Each fort has a complement of ballistas, large and small. Big stones, metal balls, and even combustible objects are now to be rained down upon the Gallic assault force. Despite all this fire, there is no effect. The Roman missileers must be getting their range. Now to the Gallic attack phase, and the assault on the fort results in the occupants being pushed back 1. That's a defender route 1. But it's a defender route 1 only, and the Gauls can't advance in and destroy the fort. Just to the north, there's a little battle, and that results in a melee. A melee result in the combat results is basically a no effect. To the Gallic attack on the north now, and notice that they're really hitting the corners, the apexes here, so they can get maximum amount of units on these attacks. As we look into the left, the 5 units there, minus the disrupt counter, have pushed the Roman unit back 1. In the center, it's a complete repulse. Further east now, and we see that the 4 Gallic units are locked in melee there, basically a no result with the 1 cohort. But in that fort on the upper right end there, they've made some progress. That 1 unit went flying off, that 5-6, that was a soak off. I'll explain that later. But you can see some powerful units there, and they were able to advance onto the rampart with a defender route 2. And I'll just note here that a black arrow means advance as a result of the combat, and a purple arrow is a retreat as a combat result. Now to the upward movement chart. Look back at what happened with the upward movement at the beginning of this turn. And on the north side, you can see that in upward zone 4, where the lesser out of force assaulted, they still have 8 units out there. But they moved some cavalry up into upward 5 and over to the greater outer force opposite the East Alesia plain. They too have left 8 units out there, but they have moved a considerable host into upward zone 7, which is a little bit north on the east side. It's Roman turn 4, and the western elements of Caesar's army are reacting. The Gauls start with the initiative, and it's important for Caesar and Labienus to reverse that. In the south, Caesar has moved east, and he's bringing cohorts with him. Roman units moving along the ramparts pay 1/2 movement cost, and they shift along the line to converge on crisis points. It's somewhat like a daisy chain, where one unit coming from the west moves its full movement, relieves another cohort that hasn't moved, and then the relieved unit can continue on to move forward for another potentially 16 hexes. That's what's happening along the inner and outer ramparts here. With that, they are able to move reinforcements into the southwest and east Alesia plain sectors, but Caesar is still 2 miles away. In the southwest, they have reoccupied the abandoned fort and brought up a slinger unit. They can occupy the fort without subsequently attacking because unit zone of control does not extend into a fort hex. In the north, it's much the same. Labienus brings along cohorts from the west, and units are stripped off Mount Ray, including missile units. With those reinforcements, they pull back from the ramparts east of Mount Ray and form a new line. They then also reinforce the center, but Labienus himself won't be there until next turn. At the Roman fort on the right, they have pulled back to a line at its south end, next to the fort, and a northern Italian recruit is sent down to the southeast to screen. Units from the north are also sliding into the northeast sector to reinforce, not necessarily there, but to go down and help on the East Alesia plain. And here are the first losses of the game on turn 4, and they're all from the outer works. Pretty light considering the action. It's now turn 5, and we're just going to go right into the Gallic onboard movement. There's not a lot of offboard movement that's going to go on, and some of those units that were held off in the north and on the east are going to be just piling in here. Looking to the north on turn 5, and we can see their projected move here. It illustrates the complexity of executing movement in a game of this scale. The Gauls are hitting the left side here, pushing down on the east, but are leaving the center alone. And as a total force, the lesser outer force is shifting to the east, away from pressure from Labienus. The Gauls charge forward now, and, as well as taking 2 losses on the outer works, they take more missile fire now, the Romans having brought up more archers and slingers from the west. The tower in the Roman camp opens up, eliminating an 8-6 and disrupting at range 2. Slinger fire in the center is no effect. The archer 3 hexes west gets a disrupt, and the far left archer here gets an elimination on an 8-6. The slinger on the end there misses at range 2. The Gauls fill in as best they can, and we're going to go straight into the Gaul attack phase in the north here. And as we look at combat resolutions from west to east, we can see 2 Gallic units firing at the archer and 2 cohorts, and that is a melee result. Above that engagement, just up to the upper right, you can see there's 5 Gallic units attacking the 2 cohorts there. And that is going to end up in a battle rages. Looking at the combat results table, we can see that battle rages results are not uncommon. When I played the game back in the day, I found the battle rages result frustrating. I disliked it so much, I had actually whited out one result on the table. I was used to Panzerblitz with its more decisive results. One inconvenient element to it is that all units involved must be inverted. The practical effects of a battle rages is that these inverted units are locked in combat until the attacker's next attack phase, at which time they must all refight the battle. So they are in this stasis for almost a full game turn, unless the defending player wishes to counterattack. They still exert zone of control, but units that move adjacent are not required to attack them while they are in the battle rages. Don't pass judgment early on the battle rages, as I did. It helps shape the game, as the designers intended. And back to the Gallic attack resolution in the north. And in between the 2 battle rages, you can see that they got a defender route 4, and the Gauls can advance 3. And so that one cohort went back all the way to the river. We had the battle rages, and then just to the right of that, they eliminate 2 defenders there. So the Romans lost a cohort and one of their mercenary cavalry. The Gauls advance as far as they can. The river's sort of constricting that. And then to the right of the tower, we have an attack, and they have forced a defender route 1. And now to the southeast, going back to their movement. And we see what the onboard forces intend to do, but also the forces that the Greater Outer Force have moved up into offboard 7 are also assaulting north of the Alesia Plain. But we'll start here in the southeast, where we've been before. And once again, the Gauls are trying to just get in there and pinch off that little corner. Although they take no outer works losses here, a Roman missile fire is increasing. The slinger left hits his target, eliminating a 7-6. Each of the 2 towers in the north hit at range 1, disrupting 2 units. Moving north across the river, we see 2 cohorts, each reinforced with a Numidian light, coming under attack. The fort is able to disrupt at range 3 there, and there were no outer works losses. The 6-sided die is somewhat of a blunt instrument, and we're seeing some streaky die rolls here. Moving north to the river and beyond, and we can see elements of the Greater Outer Force that were in offboard 7. As they assault, the Romans round out their missile fire for the turn. The tower on the river eliminates a 7-6 at range 3. The tower in the center scores 2 disrupts at range 1 and eliminates an 8-6 at range 3. The lone tower at the north end fires at range 3 to no effect. From the east wall of Alesia, Vercingetorix can see the relief force actions in the distance, and he has decided to move forces out. His main force moves east to respond to what he believes will be the main effort. If the Roman defenses are to collapse on the East Alesia Plain, they must be attacked from both sides. But he is also dispatching about 5,000 men to the north. Perhaps they can interdict or occupy the attention of Labienus reinforcements as they head east. Vercingetorix detaches another 5,000 men south, and they hit the river and the outer works in front of Caesar. There's a good chance that they will be repulsed here, and they lose 2 units on the outer works. 2 more Gallic units fill in. And that was the end of the Gallic movement and Roman missile fire. Here are the losses in the Gallic movement phase, and you can see that the Roman missileers are going for the strongest Gallic formations. Now the Gauls attack. And we go back to the 8 Alesia units attacking the south inner ramparts. Both attacks result in a melee, and that is a pretty good result for the Gauls here. They can hang out during the Roman move and exert their zone of control. Moving to the southwest sector, we can look at the projected Gaul attacks here. They're attacking the tower again. They do have disrupted units. They're trying to attack inside and along the river there. 2 attacks on the 2 cohorts and the Numidians. And north of the river, we can see the new arrivals from Offboard Zone 7 getting to work with 4 target hexes. And we'll start resolving combat right here. And you can see that to the upper north on the apex, it's a repulse. Just below that on the tower is a melee, and they did get a defender route 1 just below the melee. Going south, it's much the same. It's a complete repulse except 1 melee in the middle. A lot of attacker route 1, etc. The streaky die rolls are continuing. Looking north to examine the Roman turn 5 movement up there, and we see the eastward shift from Mount Ray, and the West End forces is continuing, including 2 missile units. Some can go into action, but others need to continue to reinforce the beleaguered Roman camp up there. And the Romans in the center are pulling out. They're pulling back to form a new line. Labienus intends to create a secondary line out that way, but he is aggressive and plans on a counterattack on the lesser outer forces right. And that's what he does. He lines up 4-to-1 odds on his counterattack. And any attack involving Labienus gets to roll twice, the Roman player then picking the best result. Once he advances, he can possibly use the battle rages there to disadvantage the Gauls on the next turn. In the center, the Romans have pulled back nicely, and the line extending east along the secondary ramparts looks good. But they are sticking with that fort up there on the camp, without adding much anything. In the south, we can only wonder at what Caesar must have seen as he rode east along the ramparts. The dust of battle in the distance on the plain, the units pouring out of Alesia, and an assaulting force of 4,000 Gauls right in his path. They lost 900 men on the outer works getting into this position, and their melee result means that they are exerting zone control into 4 hexes along the inner rampart. For the Roman units clashing with them, it means attack or move off, and the Gallic units are doubled on defense because of the river. For Caesar and the cohorts he is pulling with him to reinforce the East Alesia plain, it means go around, and that means they also need to go around the fingers of rivers extending south. Overall, Caesar's legions are shifting at a rapid pace. There's a desperate need to reinforce the East Alesia plain, in which the Gauls will surely assault from both sides next turn. And all of that translates into, you guessed it, this blue spaghetti. This is an extremely difficult move to execute by the Roman player, and it takes him a lot of time. He has reinforced the southeast corner and has moved more units into the Alesia plain, including another missile unit. A screen of Numidian lights is also placed inside the inner ramparts to contain the Alesia force movement toward the southeast. And we can see how far Caesar has made it, bypassing the Gaul zone of control. Roman units behind him have pulled back from the intrepid South Alesia force. The only Roman attack is in the north, where Labienus has assembled 8,000 soldiers to participate. And one thing you may have noticed is that the Gauls generally fill up a single hex with 2 units. But looking closely at Labienus' counterattack, we can see that he has 3 units in each attacking hex, plus himself in 1. What's going on here? Now, looking at the cover of the rule book, you might say, yeah, Since a Gallic warrior is physically twice as big as a Roman soldier, they can't fit as many giant dudes like that in a single hex as regular sized Roman dudes can. And they got those horns sticking out of their helmets. But that's not the reason. Gallic units on average have a greater combat strength than Roman units. In most part, this is because they contain more men. The amount of men that can fit into a single hex is about 1,500. And in wargame simulations, the amount of units a player can deploy in a single hex is known as the stacking limit. In this game, the Gallic unit can stack a maximum of 2 units in a hex, and the Romans can stack 3. Leaders do not count against those limitations. If units have to retreat as a result of combat, they cannot violate stacking limits in their destination hex, and if they do, they are eliminated. Most losses in the combat phases in this game are incurred from units which are unable to perform the retreat or route result due to overstacking or prohibitive enemy zone of control. Armed with that information, we can conduct Labienus' counterattack now. At 4-to-1 odds, he can move the Gauls back with anything except a die roll of 6. And because he's Labienus, he gets to roll twice and pick the best result of the 2 die rolls. But both die rolls are 6s. He got the big 1 out of 36 result, and it's just a melee. With that, we look at the turn 5 losses and move on to turn 6. Looking at the projected Gallic move here, the relief force player is showing his hand. He's putting pretty much all of his forces onto the map, which means we don't have to go look at the offboard movement chart. And so we'll go to the north here, where the lesser outer force is intent on proving the maxim, less is more. As noted last turn, the lesser outer force is shifting east. But what we didn't note is the cavalry that has also shifted east and is really almost in the northeast sector there. And they're going to come into play here. Looking at the Gaul move from left to right, there is still an eastward shift. That battle rages is going to become active in the attack phase, and the Gauls reinforce there. They also work to exploit the center, concentrating on the archer plus cohorts on the river. And that battle rages to the right. They try to cut off one cohort there, hoping to eliminate it. In the Roman camp area, they are pushing down hard and intent on destroying that fort. And down to the southeast, with cavalry assistance, they assault the lone northern Italian cohort, as well as a cohort manning the ramparts in a gap in the outer works. There aren't a lot of checks on the outer works up here, but they did lose a 6-6 just south of the 3 Roman cohorts and the tower, which are now surrounded. That fort opens up and starts a barrage of Roman missile fire all across the north end. But the fort misses at all 3 ranges. It must be firing blanks now. Moving toward the center to look at more missile fire, the slinger on the second set of ramparts fires at an 8-6 passing by to the north and disrupts it. Up along the river, and the slinger and archer units miss their targets. The archer on the west end also fails to hit. Those are dismal results for the Romans, and that helps the lesser outer force apply full pressure on a broad front in the Gaul attack phase. And keeping in mind that we still have the Alesia force to move, as well as the greater outer force, we're going to go straight into the attack phase here. And if you're like me, you're ready to get into it here. So we're going directly to the combat results and aftermath, and look at them from left to right. On the west end, there is a 5-6 attacking Labienus in a soak-off, and he gets attacker route 4. Labienus elects not to advance, and that turns out to be a mistake, because the battle rages just to the upper right has become active, and 5 units on 2 Roman cohorts. That comes to a 3-to-1. and the two cohorts are required to retreat, but they can't due to overstacking and enemy zone control, and are eliminated. The mass of Roman units there have worked against Labienus. Two attacking Gauls advanced there, and on the hex to the right, the 8676 force and the 11th cohort Route 1. And you can see just next to that, the Sokov results in a battle rages. Doesn't need to be circled there, but it is. Down on the river, we recall that a Roman archer and two cohorts are under attack, and that results in a battle rages. They were a tough target on the river, and finally something goes right for Labienus, even if only that. Looking east at the activated battle rages between the river, and that Roman cohort was eliminated as planned. The river is impeding the attackers' advance, but they are content on their gain there. And now to the Roman camp, where 3,000 Gauls hit the fort, forcing the occupants to retreat too, which they cannot do, resulting in their elimination. The Gauls exult as they enter and destroy the fort. Just 2 hexes south, a single cohort faces 4-1 odds, and it's the defender eliminated result. Nice. In the angle to the southeast, Gaul cavalry and an 8-6 unit throw a northern Italian recruit back one. And on the end, to round out this Roman butt-kicking, 2 strong Gaul units send another cohort of the 11th rooting east, and 800 Gauls advance onto the rampart there. Expecting to see more Roman infantry in their path, they instead sight other Gauls 5 hexes away on the inner rampart. With the lesser outer force movement and combat completed in spectacular fashion, we must rewind and look to the east. There, tens of thousands of men from the greater outer force are preparing to assault the outer perimeter over a stretch of 2 miles plus, some for the second time. Although the Romans are reinforced there, the Gauls, having spent hours marching into position and forming up, must go forward. It's now or never. Once more onto the eastern ramparts, and they lose 5 on the outer works as a hail of Roman missile fire rains down. Due to a technical breakthrough in our rendering process, only the missile hits will be shown with stars. And there's a lot of them here. Starting in the southeast corner, we see the tower at the corner eliminating an 8-6 at range 2. As they come in, he eliminates a 7-6 point blank, but misses at range 3. The tower on the north inner rampart eliminates his range 3 target, an 8-6. The tower on the river southeast disrupts a unit at range 1, but misses further out. On the East Alesia plain, the south tower fails to have an effect, and the sister tower north misses also. The slinger on the outer apex area disrupts at range 2. And up north on the river, the left tower of the 2 towers opens up at range 3 first, with no effect. He then fires at range 2 due east and eliminates a 7-6. But hold on here. The tower seems to have moved 1 hex to the west, at least from my recollection. Now, I'm kind of a hands-off game master, as you may have noticed, but tower creep is intolerable. Checking with the stewards, we see that it is indeed the case. The tower will be moved back with no further action. His well-behaved twin sister on the right misses at range 3 on the river, but disrupts at range 1 and eliminates a 7-6 at range 2, illustrating the effectiveness of stationary missile fire. And that giant star out to the right it's just a stray mark. Moving to the northern 2 towers, the tower south on the slope fires at range 1, eliminating both an 8-6 and a 7-6 unit. He then disrupts a 5-6 at range 2 while missing at range 3. The north tower misses at all 3 ranges. Total missile fire in the east here eliminated 7 units, wiping out 5,000 men, and disrupted 6 other units. The rest of those losses were on the outer works. And now we look over at the Alesia force, where Vercingetorix has decided it's time for him to move out. If he is to transit to the edge of the map board, with his movement factor of 8, he has to afford himself time to do so, taking into account any maneuver and delay that may occur. In front of him, the vanguard of his army has been set in motion and is about to hit the inner ramparts of the South Alesia plain, as well as Roman units to the northeast along the river. The forces south of Alesia are moving east-northeast, and mindful of Caesar's forces south, they can be ready to screen. The Alesia force player executes his move, losing 3 units on the outer works here. We can see Vercingetorix's new position, no longer protected by the walls of Alesia, but by 4,000 of his own men. Along the inner ramparts, the Romans have but 1 slinger unit for missile fire, and they get a 7-6 at range 2. And here are the losses of the Alesia force on their turn 6 movement. No extra charge for the dog hair there. And now the Gallic forces in the east conduct their attacks, 23 in total. With almost all Roman targets on the ramparts where their defense is doubled, most attacks will be fought at 2-1. But if they can just gain the ramparts here or there, combat is resolved, and we start in the southeast. The tower on the southeast corner won't quit, and it's a melee. North of that, it's a pretty intense battle rages. Above the tower on the river, 2 Gallic units have to retreat. There's another battle rages there. And up on the South Alesia plain, it's another battle rages. And one more above that. At the apex of the ramparts, there is a repulse, and those 4 Gallic units against the 2 cohorts above that is a melee. Just north of the river, they have managed to force a cohort of the 8th back 1. Above that, though, they are repulsed off of the ramparts by 2 defending cohorts, and they lose a retreating unit due to overstacking. At the tower on the slope, it's defender route 2. And at the north end of the apex, 4 Gallic units are forced to retreat. They did get a defender to route 2 on the tower, but that's it. Looking at the Alesia force effort on the river there, and they have some tough units there, and managed to get 2 melees, and they have pushed that mercenary cavalry back 1. Not bad. South along the inner rampart, where 8 of Vercingetorix's finest have been repulsed. And below that, 6 units were attacking the inner rampart at the apex, and a 5-6 of the Averni is eliminated as he assaults 2 Roman cohorts, a rare attacker eliminated result. So why did the 5-6 Averni even make that attack? His attack was a soak-off. He is part of a multi-unit battle whose main objective is to put maximum force on the slinger and cohort 2 hexes south. But on that slinger target, they only have the opportunity to attack with 4 units. And the Gallic player wants to have all 4 on the primary target. It's about Roman zone of control, and if he moves just the 4 in on the slinger cohort target, one of his 2 north side Gallic units would be required to attack the 2 Roman cohorts adjacent to the northwest, thus leaving only 3 Gallic units to attack the primary. So the 5-6 Averni was brought in to conduct that attack north, to free up a 4th unit for the primary attack. You see the same thing playing out in the south end, where a 7-6 is brought in to occupy the Numidian Light. In the end, all were repulsed, and the main assault in the east on turn 6 results in failure. But on the river south of Alesia, 2 4-6s get a battle rages result on 1 mercenary cavalry on the ramparts, a good result in a combat phase full of poor ones. Rushing east toward the point of crisis, Caesar can see the repulse of the Alesia force and Vercingetorix's movement onto the eastern plain. But he faces another impediment in the form of the battle rages ahead of him, and there is a creek jutting out as well. He must decide on a path. Should he attack along the river, or skirt the battle ahead and get as far as he can? With Vercingetorix clearly in view but moving away from him, he realizes that he can make it to the bend on the river to the east. He will stand on the Alesia plain there and dare the Gauls to attack him. But he has little prospect of gaining on his quarry. He's bringing along a force of 10 cohorts, 2 cavalry, and 2 missile units. A few will form a line behind him, and the battle rages will be reinforced. The light units ahead of him will help reinforce the east end, and the pathway across the river in the southeast must be kept open. So he wants to reinforce the southeast corner. He would also like to reinforce along the outer ramparts of the Alesia plain, expecting another assault there, and he wants to strengthen the lines, both inner and outer, up there. Crucially, he needs to reinforce at the 2 towers and strengthen the line along the river running west-northwest. These 2 areas are the most concerning. And as we watch the move being executed, we can see that he has reinforced the battle rages there behind Caesar. He's made it to his position there. In the southeast, they have reinforced that corner. Not as much reinforcement in the Alesia plain there, but they have reinforced up at the 2 towers. But they weren't able to get as much as they would have liked into the northeast, along the river there. In fact, the Romans that were along the ramparts there have pulled back. They can't afford to stay adjacent and attack. And it's time to take a moment to talk about the influence of adjacent enemy units here, as well as look at the situation that this reoccupied fort will face in the upcoming Gallic move. The rulebook isn't huge, and it's easy to get the broad concepts down if you are used to wargame simulations. So much so that you might miss 1 or 2 really important rules tucked into the end of a section here or there. There is a rule that if a Roman fort starts the Gallic movement phase with an enemy unit adjacent to it, it loses its secondary and tertiary ranges for that turn. As some of you experienced Alesia players watching may have noticed, this rule has been violated previously, notably last turn in the southeast, where the corner tower fired at those ranges, even though the Gallic units started adjacent to it. In that instance, an 8-6 Gallic unit was eliminated at range 2, and that should not have occurred. But none of the 3 players seem to be aware of this rule, and I'm a busy man, and who am I to tell them? We will watch for more of this in the coming phase, and perhaps it will come to the attention of the stewards. Still in the Roman movement phase, and Labienus, fresh off his lackluster counterattack, is also concerned about the northeast. But he has a lot of work to do, and the lesser outer force has proved to be more than a handful. There is a desperate need to move east. But closer in, there are 2 battle rages at the river, one which he will support, and one that he will not. So he will reinforce the battle rages on the river due east. Beyond that, he will reinforce the area on the secondary ramparts on the next river over. He needs to form new lines all along the secondary rampart. Also, he needs to form lines south to counter the Alesia forces there. And if that isn't enough, on the east end, he has to blunt the Gallic infiltrations there. A crisis has now developed centering around the northeast sector, and he deploys his missile units aggressively. And now the Roman player executes the move, and Labienus himself has moved on to the secondary rampart and has made it to the next river over. The Gauls still have the initiative, and the Roman legions there prepare for another assault by the lesser outer force. Approaching the end of turn 6, and there are only 2 attacks by the Romans. Along the south inner rampart, 3 cohorts attack and eliminate a 4-6, which could not retreat. The attackers could advance 1 hex here, but choose to remain on the river. And just below the 2 towers, cohorts of the 7th and 8th legions managed to push a 5-6 back 1 on the river. Good for them. Now we go into turn 7. Disruption counters are removed, and battle rages from the previous Gallic turn will become active. From the eastern Alesia plain, Vercingetorix has seen the vanguard of his Alesia force repulsed, with the Romans firmly holding the ramparts there. Although this could change, it's blocked for now. To his northeast, things look promising, but it is quite a distance to the map edge out that way, and if he doesn't hit the river this turn, it will take even longer if he is to go in that direction. He decides to hit the river now. We can see the projected move of all the forces here. His Alesia army will slide northeast along with him, and the units south of town will follow and screen. The battle is intensifying, and there is one area east that is of critical importance for victory, for both sides. One of the goals of the Greater Outer Force has been to overrun the area at the two towers. The relief player's plan called for this, and has been working toward it, because seizing that area would have facilitated the extraction of Vercingetorix through the East Alesia plain. But that was Gallic Plan A, and it's out. With Vercingetorix squarely on the river, and considering the breakout of the Lesser Outer Force north, cutting off the two-tower area is still a critical objective. If this is done now, even if only for one turn, the Roman forces will be unable to flood into the northeast sector and interdict at a crucial point in the game. So the Gauls aren't interested in destroying the forts now. It's too costly. They want to move in and exert their zone of control into the hexes just north of the towers. At this hour of battle, just a handful of hexes may open the way to victory. Here, the Gauls can't really move adjacent to the two cohorts, but they should have the capacity to block the other three hexes, and that is going to be costly too. On the left, units from the Alesia force have to take out the Roman mercenary cavalry that's on the rampart there, and they will pick from their finest to do so. With the towers firing and a slinger to the south, it's going to be bloody. As Vercingetorix directs his army to the northwest, the Greater Outer Forces crash the Roman defenses once again. Back to the southeast corner, and the freewheeling fort down there has held and is reinforced. With 3 forts in this area and an archer lurking, it looks like a heavy task for the Gauls. But even if the Gauls pull back, they will take missile fire, so the signal is to go forward. The concentrated missile fire in the area is going to be heavy, and Caesar is getting close with potentially 5,000 fresh soldiers. As the first Gallic units move, Roman missile fire erupts. The fort in the corner gets a disrupt at range 1. 2 hexes north, the archer disrupts a 7-6 at range 2. At the river, the south fort disrupts both units 1 hex southeast. He then fires at range 3 and disrupts an 8-6. And his range 2 fire to the northeast on the battle rages eliminates a 7-6. The North River fort also fires at the battle rages and eliminates an 8-6. This fire is happening during the initial stages of the Gallic move down in the southeast, and it causes the Gauls to give up on the southeast tower. It signals the beginning of the end for the assault in the southeast. Although the battle rages down there keeps them from conducting a general retreat, 2 units move back to the river so they can move north next turn. Other units cover their left flank with a screen. Above the river, a handful of Gallic units go in to support the 2 battle rages along the outer ramparts. There are no losses on the outer works there, and fire from the fort gets disrupt at range 2 and then eliminates a 6-6 at range 3. Looking to the north section of the East Alesia plain here, the Gauls are going to avoid attacking below the Twin Towers. With the Gallic Plan A scrapped now, they intend to attack at the apex, hoping to keep as many Roman units engaged as they can, and they will put units onto or across the river north. As the Gallic move is executed there, The north fort on the inner plain hits at range 3 on the apex, eliminating a 7-6. Lost Gallic units are replaced there from both north and south. And now, north of the river, we can see the projected Gaul move here, the main feature of which is a thrust onto the ramparts between the two towers and the slope north. As discussed earlier, a presence there will further their plan B. They will also hit the fort on the slope. As in the south, the Romans open up with missile fire just as the first units begin to move. Sister Tower on the river scores a disrupt at 7-6 at range 1. Her outer ranges miss, and note that she is done with fire here and will not be able to help her restless twin brother against the Alesia force when they move. Unlike down south, the outer Gallic forces in this stretch are going to make it onto the ramparts in force, and their main target are two 9th Legion cohorts. The tower on the slope lets loose at all ranges to no effect. However, the tower on the north end eliminates a 7-6 at range 1. And as we look at the completed move, we see the attacking forces pushing hard on the two cohorts of the 9th, as well as forts, center and north. Now we will look at movement of the lesser outer force from west to east and see what kind of a beating they have planned for Labienus on this turn. This force hasn't missed a beat. It has already fulfilled its Plan A mission and is very much ready to respond to Plan B, C, and whatever else that may be required of them. Viewing their general move, we can see that the western units are supporting the battle rages there and trying to lock down as many enemy units as they can. In the center, they thrust south from the captured camp, and on the east end, they have free movement beyond the outer rampart, including several eager cavalry units. Analyzing the completed move here, and everything west and center here is intended to engage and delay the Roman forces. On the east side, they are causing problems with several powerful units on the ramparts, and the Gallic cavalry, taking full advantage of the gap in the outer works, moves to invest the interior. Behind them, two more cavalry units from offboard 6 ride in hard to reinforce at the angle. Roman missile fire only gets one disrupt in the center. The lesser outer force now has an advantage that comes with early Gallic success in this game. It is free of the obstacles that have repulsed other Gallic forces, such as the outer works, forts, and the rampart advantage. Behind their push to the southeast, they expect to mop up and eliminate the battle rages on the northwest edge, and also eliminate two cohorts and finish that battle that started in the fort and is now south of the fort. Now to the Alesia force, where Vercingetorix is going to move onto the river. In going there, he doesn't have to commit himself to any direction. He can still move back into Alesia and hope for a better day tomorrow. But it's not a good option considering the Gallic losses. His inner army has been directed to move and support his course to the northwest. Behind him, Alesia force units will pull back north and screen against the threat of Caesar's forces on the southern plain. As he moves the 3 hexes onto the river, some of his stronger forces will move with him, but others will be required to charge straight into the teeth of the 2 towers. For that purpose, he has a powerful force to his east to attempt the task, and they are ready to go. Some of these strong formations were allied with the Romans just a year or two earlier, fighting alongside Caesar on the Rhine against the Germans, and their assigned targets consist of German mercenary cavalry that the Romans are employing. Those forces now assault. As Vercingetorix moves onto the river, a 9-6 east of him moves off of the river to attack the Roman 8th Legion cohort a 7-6-5-6 join in, and this provides a screen for Vercingetorix. For the attacks on the cavalry, an 8-6 moved onto the ramparts to hit the 2 on the north. The west tower misses him at range 3. Just south, the Gauls hit the river and the outer works. An 8-6 moves that way, but is eliminated by slinger fire at range 2. A 9-6 then makes it to the river, but is eliminated on the outer works. Another 9-6 and 7-6 get on the river, and the Gallic player holds his breath, and they both survive the outer works. Looking to the north, Alesia force now to round out the Gallic move, where units have moved onto the ramparts. One to soak off the 2 cohorts, and the other 2 to attack the cavalry there. So as the Gallic movement phase ends, we can look at the losses. The relief force lost 5 due to missile fire, and a 5-6 on the outer works. The Alesia force lost an 8-6 to those shifty slingers, and a 9-6 and a 6-6 on the outer works. With hours of heavy hand-to-hand combat behind them, the Gauls and the Romans now attack and defend with fury. There are 26 distinct attacks to resolve, but all eyes are looking to the area above the 2 towers, where important results await. But here we must take a moment to examine hand-to-hand combat in this game, because a lot more of it is coming. The missile fire that has been displayed in the game represents large formations, with devices that reach ranges of 2 and 3 hexes, up to about 300 meters. But at the closer ranges, there are other missile weapons that are firing. When the Gauls close to 1 hex, the Roman cohorts are chucking javelins and perhaps light ballistas at their foe. The game takes this into account, and that missile capability is included in the combat factor of each unit. The Gauls also had missile units, and although less is known about them, it is safe to assume that they are pelting the Romans with spear and arrow. But it is hand-to-hand combat that comprises the bulk of the unit's attack factor in this game. And at this range, the opponents were eye to eye, despite what you see in this illustration, in which it's more like eye to lower Gallic tunic. With that clarified, we will look at the Gallic attack in turn 7, and we are going to start south of Alesia, where the now active battle rages gains our attention first. The 2 4-6s of the Averni could not disengage. The result is another battle rages. Wow. Back to the southeast corner, and the battle rages there results in attacker route 1, and 2 Gallic units are eliminated due to overstacking in the destination hex. North of the river now, and we can see there's a defender route 1 there with no advance. Beyond that, there's some repulses. At the apex, they did push a Roman cohort back and advance onto the ramparts. Continuing with the combat results on the outer perimeter, at the apex there, it is a repulse. As we move north of the river, there is a melee result. Above that, there is another melee result. And on both edges of the melee north, there were soak-offs. 2 Gallic units were eliminated in those 2 spots. And finally, on the northeast end, the assault against the tower results in attacker advance 1, defender route 2. And the Gauls go in and destroy the fort. And now we're going to look at the lesser out of force combat results, and we're going to go to the west end of that, and they're getting some unfortunate results. There's a melee there, and along the river another melee, and in the center they've been repulsed. And that long black arrow south is a stray mark, but it's probably trying to tell us that Labienus has advanced 1. At the camp north, The Gallic attack has amassed 3-to-1 odds on 2 surrounded Roman cohorts. The result is attacker advance 1, defender route 2. But the 2 Roman cohorts have nowhere to go and are thus eliminated. 2 Gallic units dutifully advance 1 from the northeast. And that is the extent of their advance, because on an attacker advance 1, it means only 2 units can advance into the vacated hex, and nobody can go further. Rounding out the Gaul attack in the north, there are 2 attacks, and they are getting some better results here. On the right, 2 cavalry combined with 2 8/6s to attack 1 northern Italian recruit, throwing him back 4 hexes west. One of the 8/6s advances 3 hexes southwest. The attack north against the 13th cohort results in its elimination, and several Gaul units advance, with 1 8/6 moving adjacent to the archer plus cohort. The lesser outer force is widening the gap. And now to the Alesia force units. And we are going to go through their attacks in the order in which they were taken. First, to the attack 3 hexes northwest of the 2 towers, where a 2-to-1 results in a battle rages. And that is a decent result for the Alesia force player, who then resolves the attack 2 hexes south against the single German mercenary cavalry holding the rampart there. The Gauls lost 1,500 men trying to make it into this spot, but another 1,500 were able to continue on and make it there. If this attack fails, the Romans can squeeze through there and reinforce the northeast sector. It's 4-to-1 odds, but they still need a die roll of 3 or less to advance, and they get a 3. That's defender route 3, attacker advance 1. With the Germans thrown south across the river, a lone 9/6 of the Aedui tribe advances into the vacated rampart hex. With that position taken, the Gauls have accomplished their main goal this turn, but they are hoping for more to the northwest, where they need to make room for Vercingetorix. Along that way, we see a melee result, very disappointing for the Gauls at 4-to-1 odds. But 3 hexes northwest, 2 tough Gallic units on the river push up onto the ramparts, forcing a cavalry back. Now looking at the northmost attack, where a lone 6/6 was soaking off on 2 Roman units, and he got a battle rages at 1-to-2 odds. Lucky. The main attack of this multi-unit battle occurs 2 hexes south, where 2 6/6s attack a single German cavalry, and that results in a defender route 3, attacker advance 2. And just a note on the cavalry retreat, those 2 purple arrows should be reversed. Shown here are the losses from the Gallic attack phase, and they got a fort, but it's only their second. As Caesar stands on the river on the South Alesia plain, he can hear and see the signs of battle rages in the great arc around him. Distantly in the north to sharply in the southeast corner. But directly to his front, between those vectors, is the main mass of the Alesia force, moving directly away from him and his reinforcements. Vercingetorix on the river is still over 2 kilometers away, and the screen that he has left behind him is in depth. Attacking it directly will not get him any closer to his prize. It's going to be another complex move for the Roman player. His relieving forces have been cut off from the critical sector, and it's easy to visualize the path of salvation for Vercingetorix. So Caesar will draw as close to the 2 towers on the river as he can, cutting diagonally across the plain, and then rejoin the rampart line there. To his right, the East Alesia plain rampart area is going his way. In fact, it's ending, and that will help his reinforcement effort. Tactically, he wants to reinforce the immediate area around the 2 towers on the river. He also wants to reinforce the south end of the East Alesia plain, where he must keep the inner rampart clear. North of that, he must maintain defensive lines on the plain itself. And as his move is executed, we can see that the forces on the outer side have backed off of their ramparts 1x, in line with the two forts there. Unable to make it to the two towers, Caesar moves to attack a 5-6 on the inner plain, and just north, more of his forces position themselves to attack. There will be some battles here at the two tower area, and there are now plenty of missile units, but they don't get a shot until turn 8. And one of the primary targets there is that 9-6, just 1 hex northwest of the left tower. And that Numidian light is there to soak off and hit the 7-6 behind it, so the rest of the guys can pile in on the 9-6. On the South Alesia plain, the Romans have a light screen and have left a handful of cohorts on the river down there to mop up the battle rages. Caesar is closing in on the Gaul Plan B, and as he leads his men into battle, he looks to the north, where he will need forces to assist. There, Labienus is dealing with multiple headaches. He is engaged in heavy fighting with strong enemy forces, which are mostly into the Roman defensive perimeter. His lines east to west are constricting, and he has to somehow put pressure on the left flank of Vercingetorix. He plans to reinforce the east to push toward the northeast sector, but also to defend against pressure coming down on him from the lesser outer force. Missile units will be extracted and directed east, and a new line will be formed behind him on the secondary ramparts. Now he executes his move, and you can see the nice line that he has left behind him as he makes his presence known east. And far out on his east end there, we see the archer that was unable to retreat due to enemy zone of control. And he's a bit vulnerable out there. All of the Roman units have moved except for the roughly 10,000 soldiers they have deployed in the northeast sector. It is a bubble of sorts. They are facing a convergence of all three Gallic armies, and their missile fire will be limited to the forts on either end. And at this point in the game, we might imagine the situation in historical terms, where these 10,000 are cut off from the rest of their army, as well as Caesar and Labienus. But the Romans have been in this situation before, in preceding years. There should be no sense of panic, and they have a cadre of combat commanders in there that are not represented in the game. Those commanders would have held a quick council to determine their course of action. Roman army doctrine would call for them to pull back into a couple of defensive boxes, and a plan is proposed to deploy them thusly. The concern with this is that Vercingetorix will be able to move a number of hexes straight north and perhaps escape easily that way. Panic or no, the decision is made to reinforce the south and put out a defensive line to limit Vercingetorix's movement this turn. And that is what they do. A team of 3 cohorts and 2 cavalry form a line along the river to their west, and that river is taking on tactical significance. Running toward the southeast, they have a picket line of just 3 cohorts and 1 cavalry in reserve. While this line will limit Vercingetorix's movement to about 3 hexes next turn, they will be facing as many as 5,000 Gauls on the Alesia side, as well as greater outer force units, which will try and converge on them. At the southeast end of that line, they have a mass of units abutting the 2 towers and pushing on the Alesia force there. That is the end of the movement for the Romans, and it is now Roman attack phase 7. They are hitting about 9 Gaul targets here. Down on the river, south of Alesia, 5 Roman cohorts are trying to mop up the 2 Gaul 4/6s there, but they are defending on the river, where their defense is doubled to 16. Along the inner ramparts of the East Alesia plain, Caesar is hitting a 5/6. Another 5/6 just north is also attacked there. As we look on to and across the river near the 2 towers, the Romans are hitting hard there. But will it be enough? Help from Labienus, who is also pushing hard, might make it so. Trying to push into the northeast sector, Titus Labienus assaults 2 strong Gallic units 1 hex east. Adjacent to his north is another attack on a 5/6, and to his south the battle rages is reinforced. As we look at the battle rages on the northwest end, the 1 Roman cohort gets a melee result, which is really good. Moving east to the main push, and on the rampart, Gaul 5/6 there has been forced to retreat by 3 Roman cohorts, and 2 cohorts advancing into the vacated hex. Next attack down, and Labienus gets a defender route 1. And thanks to the previous attack north, the defending 7/6 and 6/6 are unable to retreat, and both are eliminated. 1 hex south, the Roman archer was eliminated due to adjacent enemy units. It's questionable as to whether the archer should have faced elimination there, but it's been done, so we're booking it. The 2 battles south each result in a single Gaul unit being lost due to lack of retreat options. Moving to the southeast, 2 Gallic units get a battle rages against several Roman units. And that's kind of a big one there. It's clogging up the area north of the 2 towers. Down from there, Caesar's attack on a 5/6 results in defender eliminated, attacker advanced 3, and 1 Roman cohort advances 2. 3 hexes above that, also on the inner rampart, is a defender route 2, and 3 cohorts advance into the vacated hex. Just north of that at the river, a Numidian light infantry soaks off on a 7/6 there and is eliminated. 1 hex to the east, the heroic 9/6, who cut off the area last turn, makes its last stand, as 8 Roman units attack and eliminate it at 5-1 odds. 2 Roman cohorts advance into the vacated hex. Finally, back to the South Alesia plain, the Romans could only achieve a battle rages on the 2 Gallic units on the river. And that kind of stinks for the Romans, because that battle will not be refought for a full game turn, and so they're going to have all those units tied up there. So here are the losses in the Roman attack phase, and you can see another Alesia Force 9/6 that went down. And here are the total losses at the end of turn 7. We're now at the start of turn 8, and across the battlefield, all combatants must have some awareness now of the crisis in the northeast sector. From Vercingetorix's position on the river, it's in plain view. Within about 1,500 meters of him, there are 13,000 Roman soldiers in good order. While retreat back to Alesia is possible, it's not considered here, as a second day of battle would heavily favor the Romans. Consequently, he will execute Plan B, which means that the Roman picket line ahead of him needs to be wiped out now. Straight to his east, a mass of Roman units are forcing it above the 2 towers. Vercingetorix must move more of his Alesia force onto the river and provide screens at necessary points. The remnants of Plan A, also known as the Greater Outer Force, still have a critical role to play. Their units north of the river are still formidable. They knocked out a fort up there, and that was big. And the Romans up there have quickly abandoned the ramparts to try and slow Vercingetorix. Looking north, the Lesser Outer Force has only limited strength to aid the northeast sector. They still have to deal with Labienus, and in that endeavor, they will continue in style. They will assault the second line that Labienus has left behind him, hoping to collapse it. More Gallic units south of the captured Roman camp have been freed up and will press east onto the ridge inside the ramparts to reinforce and continue the exploitation of the northeast sector. Those Gauls already on the ridge are going to press in full toward the Roman units on the river to the southeast. In this, they will be assisted by as many Alesia force units as can be spared for the task. And as they move to attack the river, the Gallic forces in that area will ignore Labienus' main force behind, as they attempt to eject the Romans east and invest the river themselves. But we will look at the execution of the Gaul movement in the north sector first. There, they assault the Romans along the secondary ramparts at select points, while south along the inner ramparts, 4 units from the Alesia force take up new positions on the river. On the east side, units from the north camp area have moved in, and as well as investing the ridge, they are hitting a slinger and cohort on the rampart in the angle. But that slinger opens up at both ranges, and the Gauls lost a 7-6 as they rush from the north. The slinger 2 hexes west misses at range 2, and we see 2 archers in the center firing furiously to dampen the Gallic assault on their secondary rampart positions. Here, the archer on the right eliminates a 7-6 at range 2. The archer left disrupts another 7-6 at range 1. And those are good results from the Roman missile units there, but it's something they could have used earlier. Looking east toward the bubble, where elements of the lesser outer force have yet to move. And we see the projected movement there now, from a combined force. Having linked up with some Alesia units, the lesser outer force is trying to do the same with the greater outer force, which would bode ill for the Romans. Looking at the projected move of the northern component of the greater outer force, who are now charging in with all speed and little impediment. Only the 2 forts can impact them as they move, and they miss at all available ranges. The Gallic player executes his move, including Vercingetorix's forces on the river. The only ranged fire is the West Twin, who hits at range 3, and another Gaul 7-6 goes down. With no missile fire losses and a convergence of 3 forces, the Gauls are poised to overwhelm the Roman picket line, as well as Roman units in and around the battle rages. Behind Vercingetorix, there is an ample screen to protect the Alesia force from attack on the Alesia plain. Rounding out the Gallic turn 8 movement, we look at the greater outer forces in the east and southeast, below the North River. The general movement is one of disengagement and a northward shift. But as soon as they begin to move, Roman missile fire peppers the entire front there. So we will look at this action from the top, where units on the outer works are trying to move to the North River. The slinger next to the east twin tower misses a 5-6 at range 2. 5 hexes south, the north tower on the Alesia plain fires at ranges 2 and 3, wiping out a 7-6. Now to the archer there, and its range 2 target is eliminated, the Gauls losing a 6-6. Those same archers miss at range 1 on a 7-6, but the tower next to them finishes the job there. It then fires at its outer 2 ranges to no effect. Moving toward the southeast corner, where the 3 forts there are known for fierce and sometimes extra-legal fire. Only the center of the towers hits at a range of 1, eliminating a 7-6 on the river. Their misdeeds do not reward them here. Through all of this, the greater outer force trudges north, but they are launching an assault on the south inner tower. With that, the Gallic movement ends. Now the Gauls launch their attack. In the northeast, between the ramparts, Elements of 3 Gallic armies converge on approximately 2,200 mixed Roman forces. The Alesia force is pressing on the Roman line there. Behind the beleaguered Roman units, elements of the Gallic relief force, poised on the ridge, can see it all. The auspices of the Druids are coming true before their eyes. For the Gallic players in this game, the ultimate prize is Vercingetorix escaping off the map board for victory. But almost equally satisfying is when they can trap a legion or two in a vice and crush it. On this day of battle, it's only half a legion, but having come this far and having lost so many, it is now their time to exact a revenge upon the Roman army, which has ravaged their people and lands during the long conflict. For the Gallic players here, the order in which they make their attacks are important, because an initial attack can cut off a retreating target of the subsequent attack. So as we look at the combat resolution here, we see the Gauls attack a single cohort of the 9th Legion in strength, and with 5-to-1 odds, they get defender eliminated. 2 units advance into the target hex there, and they have helped cut off the 9th cohort adjacent south. That attack is also a 5-to-1, and it's defender route 3, attacker advance 2. Another cohort of the 9th is wiped out. The Gauls are able to attack in strength here, and a 9-6 of the Aedui advances 2 hexes north. Just up to the left, a 5-6 soak-off on the last remaining Roman cohort there, and he was thrown back 3 hexes west. Next, over on the river, a cohort of the 11th faces 4-to-1 odds, and it is defender eliminated, attacker advance 3, and 2 units move on to the empty hex there on the river. Above that, it is a melee result. So the Gauls here have occupied a part of the river south, but we'll have to wait to get more of it north. Moving into the north sector, and we see a sharp attack on the apex of the inner rampart, and that is defender route 1. To the next hex left, and the soak-off that made the previous attack possible results in the Gaul 5-6 routing 3 hexes. On the far end, and one of my homemade Roman cohorts is thrown back all the way to the inner ramparts there, and the 7-6 advances 1. Now to the East Alesia plain outer, where the Gauls are really trying to hit the south tower, and so they have soak-offs north and south. The north soak-off is a battle rages, and the south one results in a melee. But the main battle in the center is a repulse, and it's plain to see that there is just no joy for the Gauls east of Alesia. And now the Romans have their turn, and we can see a sizable combined force of over 10,000 Roman combatants are pushing up from the south Alesia plain. Labienus is also pushing east with 7,000. But that screen of Gaul cavalry in front of him, combined with the impediment of the river beyond, is going to make it difficult for forces to advance far. Between those 2 Roman forces, strong elements of the Alesia force with Vercingetorix have crossed the river and have a clear corridor toward the outer ramparts as it stands to the edge of the map board. Vercingetorix's movement factor of 8 is sort of a combination of mounted and foot movement, and we can see the possible vectors for his escape. So can the Roman player, and for him, it's bad news. He has nothing out that way, and so he must improvise. Within each of the 2 forts bookending the corridor, there are 2 units, and he will strip 3 out of those and position them into the expanse on the northeast plateau. On the south end there, that means only 1 cohort to man the isolated fort. On the north end, the Romans have 2 cohorts to move out there, but as they vacate that fort, only a German cavalry can move in to replace them. and the fort's defenses will be weakened on the next turn. South of that fort, surrounded Roman units contract and prepare for the worst. And if you think all this looks desperate, you're paying attention. A view of the broader Roman move here, and we will look first to Caesar's force. He is moving to attack the east-northeast, supporting the battle rages on his left as he presses across the river. With that, we watch the execution of Caesar's move, including all forces south. And on the south end, they've been able to reinforce there. North to Caesar, and he is looking to attack the east-northeast, supporting the battle rages on his left as he presses across the river. And the total strength of his line there is 2 legions, most of which is comprised of the 7th and the 8th. Stacked under Caesar are 3 cohorts, and adjacent south, the Romans have brought up 2 slingers, which is going to hurt later. To the southeast, they also move to attack a Gaul 5-6 on the river. On the north end, Labienus is also pushing east toward the Gallic screen, and northwest to block the gap in the outer works on the rampart area, as well as to support the battle rages adjacent. Here the Roman forces execute their move in the north. And we look on the west end, where all units are moving off Mount Ray. We haven't looked at the offboard movement chart for some time, because there has only been some individual cavalry units there. But while we have been away, they have been moving, generally to offboard zones off of the northeast sector. In other words, they are no longer showing a presence west and south of the mapboard. So we will see more Roman cohorts leaving those positions out there, including units that were occupying forts. And some of those units converge to join an attack on a single 6-6 at the Roman camp. The good news is that they can probably eliminate it. The bad news is that they are cut off from Labienus's main force and outnumbered in that sector, which is now a sideshow. Labienus has many cohorts with him east and has abandoned the secondary and inner rampart lines behind him. Now we see the projected Roman attacks. There are 15 in all, as the Roman combat engine finally revs up. Examining combat resolution, and we will start on the northern west end and go around the clock. At the east end of the Roman camp there, 6 cohorts have 4-1 on that Gaul 6-6, which is eliminated due to lack of retreat, and 2 units advance into the vacated hex. To the north, the battle rages morphs into a melee. As we move east toward Labienus, 4 Roman cohorts send 2 Gallic cavalry, retreating 2 hexes west into the angle, and 2 cohorts advance 1 onto the slope, reasserting control of the defensive gap there. A few hexes south, Labienus and company are pressing on their screen. It's all Gallic cavalry, and Labienus's attack here with 4 cohorts forces the 2 cavalry to retreat north, and participating forces advance east. Moving down to the single cavalry unit on the inner rampart, and it's 4-1 with a defender route 4, attacker advance 2. And that sets up the center attack, where 4 Roman cohorts commence on the last 2 cavalry of the Gallic screen. They are cut off from retreat and are eliminated at 5-1 odds. And the Romans advance as much as 4 there. The purple arrow showing a retreat there is just a stray mark. Over to Caesar's push above the 2 towers, and there are 6 attacks in all. Looking at the reactivated battle rages, there were 5 cohorts involved in that, and the Romans add a 6th. In the target hex are almost 800 Gauls, and it's 3-1 odds there, resulting in defender route 2, attacker advance 1. And the Gallic 8-6 is pushed 2 hexes toward Vercingetorix 2 Roman units advance that way too. Just below that, 8 cohorts attack a 5-6 on the river, and they get a defender route 1 only. 2 hexes east, and there are 2 attacks, the north of which is a soak-off on a northern Italian recruit. Those Italians were stacked with Caesar, and despite being able to choose from the best of 3 die rolls, they are eliminated. Now to the main attack, east, and the target is 2 7-6s, which is no joke. Because that attack also involves units stacked with Caesar, they gain Caesar's benefit and send 1,300 Gallic warriors tumbling back toward the tower northeast, and 3 of his cohorts advance 1. The attack south on the lone 5-6 on the river is a melee, and that's another disappointment for the Romans. On the west side of the ramparts, a soak-off attack by a Numidian light also results in a melee. And on the south river of Alesia, it's yet another. And that is the end of turn 8. Looking at the situation at the beginning of turn 9, and the Romans seem to have recovered a bit here. With the game turn sequence of one side moving and attacking, and then the other, it gives the impression of a seesaw battle. However, examining the northeast sector, we see that Vercingetorix has a clear path to the outer ramparts. He plans to move to the fort up there, drawing as many of his forces with him as he can, while providing rear guard and eliminate the 3 isolated Roman units to his north. His Alesia force and his relief army have performed well, but this may be the most difficult move for the Gallic players here. Caesar is pushing on his right flank and has 2 slinger units double stacked directly behind him, as well as the east tower, which is already in range of good targets. Looking along the projected path of Vercingetorix, we also can see that there are 4 Roman units in the outer expanse, and they will be difficult to reach, but have to be mitigated in some way. On his left flank, Labienus' main force is going to be held up by the natural barrier of the river, and the Gauls now have complete control of it. But just to the northeast, there is that pesky Roman fort. It's now lightly defended, and the Gauls intend to take it out. So the Gallic movement strategy here is to invest that Roman camp to protect Vercingetorix's destination hex. They will also form a line, investing the river and running a east-west line to contain the Roman threat south. And where that line runs south, they will once again try and take out that fort. Auspices of the Druids notwithstanding, the Gallic units on the ridge have work to do, and they will form a secondary line there. For much of the lesser outer force that isn't engaged, it will be a shift east. So as the Gallic movement phase begins, we will go to the southeast, which has been an anchor point of murderous missile fire and skullduggery for the Romans. As the Gauls start to move here, 4 Roman forts fire everything they have left, and it's going to hurt. We will look first at the forts on the river south. The rogue tower in the southeast corner has no targets at all, and those 2 forts north have no range 1 targets, so we can take comfort in thinking that they have no way to misbehave down there. The south tower misses its range 2 target on the river, but the range 3 fire from the north tower behind eliminates that 6-6 there. But boys will be boys, and that tower behind seems to be out of place. This isn't just fort creep here, it's fort pursuit. It's rules floutation. Perhaps it's an attempt to steal the show here. Or maybe those 2 want to meld together and launch a giant fireball north 1,500 meters at Vercingetorix, killing him and thereby winning the game. But I need to get serious here. What is really happening is that these forts have been moved accidentally during the Roman movement phase, and when the Roman player is moving scores of units along the ramparts, sometimes during that process, He may move aside a fort to make it easier to physically move other stacks of game pieces through. And then, when the Roman player finishes, a fort is not moved back to its proper place. It's not uncommon on a game of this scale, and it has probably happened to other units too in this game, but went unnoticed because they aren't immovable units and don't have as high a profile as a fort. Such is war, and we will continue on. So the southeast river tower takes its final parting shot at range 3, eliminating a 7-6 on the river. Moving north-northeast onto the Alesia plain, the south tower fires point blank east and disrupts both 7-6s. Its range 2 fire is no effect, but at range 3, they wipe out a 7-6 that was sitting on the outer works there. The archer in the battle rages gets 1 disrupt at range 1, and the north tower eliminates a 7-6 at range 2. And for the Gauls on the East Alesia plain, it's just more misery. Heading up to the 2 towers on the river, and only the east tower can fire at range 3, and that is no effect. Now the 2 slinger units deployed behind Caesar fire, and their targets are retreating Gauls 2 hexes north-northeast. And they scored big, eliminating both a 7-6 and a 6-6. And at that fort on the north slope, their fire eliminates a 5-6 at range 1. With the initial missile fire done, we zoom out and view the entire Gallic move. Now the Roman player fires the missile units in the north as well. As we noted earlier, the lesser outer forces general move is a shift east, and we can see that they have invested both rivers north. Eastward, on the inside of the ramparts, the Gallic cavalry that had infiltrated there is now bottled up. This is where the Gallic movement for their movement phase actually began. There, units try to form a defensive line on the crest of the ridge. Just behind them, 2 5-6s charge that tower, which, after missing a cavalry at range 2, eliminates both 5-6s at range 1. That tower's third range fires at a moving cavalry to the east to no effect. The slinger to the east disrupts my homemade 4-6 as it valiantly moves to reinforce. And the Roman missile fire is done for turn 9. Now we must examine the Gallic movement again, focusing on the bubble in the northeast sector. For clarity, we go back to the Gaul pre-move view. And now, post-move. Vercingetorix has moved within the Roman camp ramparts, and that area now looks well protected. The composite Gallic force as a whole is clearly moving northeast, with the Alesia force units pushing as hard as they can that way. The river line now due east of Vercingetorix is invested, and the 3 Roman units behind him are surrounded. There will be no quarter. On the outer plain northeast, Gallic cavalry is maneuvering to contain the 3 Roman cohorts there, with several more cavalry units drawing in behind. And on the southeast, the elements of the greater outer force have moved in once more to assault the fort on the slope. To the inner rampart area, more Alesia force units move onto the river. But note that the Gallic forces aren't really attacking Caesar, Labienus, or the fort at the north end of the river there. They have strong forces layered throughout the bubble. Preferring to avoid missile fire, the Gauls will wait for the Romans to move in on them. Shown here are the losses from missile fire during the Gallic movement. In the northeast sector, the Gauls have 3 attacks going. The assault on the fort is at 5-1, but it's a melee. In the center there, they wipe out 3 Roman units and use their advance options to add to their overall defense structure inside the bubble. Over to the angle north, the activated battle rages is attacker route 1. 3 Gauls must retreat, but 1 is eliminated due to overstacking. On the rampart west of that, the hours-long battle ends with the Roman cohort eliminated at 5-1, and 4 Gallic units advance onto the river. And south of Alesia on the river again, and the 2 4-6s get another melee. Wow. That rounds out the Gaul attack phase, and here are the losses. So here is the overall situation with the Romans. They're about to move. It's long odds for the Roman player now, but the battle continues, and we see the projected move. In the northwest, the isolated units there will advance cautiously, looking at the push east by Labienus, and with the Gaul forces on the river, there seems to be little he can do to close on Vercingetorix. He decides to push northeast and smash the cavalry on the ridge. Beyond him, the Roman player has 4 cohorts outside of the ramparts in the expanse of the northeast sector, and they will move to block Vercingetorix's path of escape as best they can. A look down to Caesar's effort, and it's going to be tough sledding. He faces strong, layered defenses. He can push north or east, but either way, he's not going to get very far in a single turn. He decides to push east, and in the southeast, they are fighting their own battles down there, which will have little effect on the outcome of this game. The Roman player may only be playing for pride at this point, but he's going to put the hurt on. So we will zoom out once again and look at the execution of the Roman move. Labienus' attack on the ridge is just that. All of his attacking forces there are on the slope, and all of the target hexes are on the crest, but the Gauls have mostly light units up there. Some distance out to his east, 4 cohorts have found their blocking positions. To Caesar's effort now, who is pressing generally eastward and also supporting the tower on the slope ahead of him. South of that, on the river, they are conducting a general assault on a line that continues all along the eastern plain for almost 2 miles, ending at the plateau in the southeast corner. A view of the projected Roman attack now, and there are about 17 distinct attacks in all, some of which are part of multi-unit battles. The Romans attack, and we will start in the southeast corner. And the first attack is a soak-off by a northern Italian recruit, and it is eliminated by the defending Gaul 6-6 there, who elects not to advance. Just above that, the main attack by 5 cohorts forces the other 6-6 there to retreat 1 hex. 2 hexes east of the south tower, 8 cohorts assault 1,200 Gauls and its defender route 3, attacker advance 1. The disrupted Gaul 5-6 just above that faces 4-1 odds and is eliminated, and the Roman attackers push out there. Just north of that, a northern Italian recruit soaks off at 1-4 odds and is repelled 3 hexes to the east. Toward the river north, and 2 northern Italian cohorts conduct soak-offs, the south of which draws a melee, and the north attack results in attacker eliminated. 5 Roman cohorts then launch the primary assault at 4-1 odds, but it's just defender route 1. North of the river now, and there is a soak-off of the 2 Gallic units on the river, and its attacker eliminated. But this helps free up 8 attacking Roman cohorts to assault a 7-6 Gaul. The Roman player has done his math here, and the attack comes in at attacker 42, defender 7. Looking at the hand-to-hand combat table, and we can see that there is no 6-1 column. In a lot of wargame simulations, that means that the attacking player just refers to the 5-1 column. But in this game, any attack coming in at 6-1 or greater automatically results in defender eliminated, attacker advance 4. If an attacking player can pull off 6-1 odds, it means guaranteed success in a game of few guarantees. So the Romans advanced there, mowing down over 600 enemy warriors, and they flanked Gallic units to the north and south. Now to Caesar's main attack, which is set up by a soak-off. And because that Roman cohort soaking off is stacked with Caesar, the Roman player gets his advantage and draws a melee on two defending 7/6s. With that formality out of the way, Caesar turns to his prey, which are the two 5/6s, one hex to his east. Leading the attack with his first cohort of the 10th, plus 6 more legions, he achieves 41 odds, picks his die roll of 1, and eliminates both 5/6s. Nice job there, but all they can do is advance 1 hex and make contact with their beleaguered fort on the slope. With the fort hanging tough there, we must look to Labienus, whose attacking cohorts are all on a slope, while the Gallic defenders are all on the crest of the ridge there. Because of that, the Gauls are doubled on defense, just as if they were on a rampart or a river hex. Although they put up a good fight there, they all have to retreat and have their backs against the impassable outer works. And only Labienus and 3 cohorts can actually advance onto the ridge top. Finally, we look south of Alesia, where that long-running engagement results in another battle rages down there. And turn 9 is over. Here are the total losses at the end of 9 turns. Looking at the situation as the Gallic players consider their turn 10 move, and there are no immediate threats to Vercingetorix in the captured Roman camp there. The Roman player has successfully prevented him from exiting the map board this turn, so he will move 7 hexes north. He doesn't want to outrun his escorts, and from that position, he can exit the map east on turn 11 or reach the north edge by turn 12. To his east, 4 Roman cohorts are something that need to be addressed. They will be screened, and both cohorts on the ends will be attacked and hopefully eliminated. With that in mind, we can look at the general movement of the Gauls on this turn. Vercingetorix is in open space now, and he can see the nimble relief force cavalry ahead, capable and on the move. The Gauls start their move, and Vercingetorix unites with some of his veterans, and I'll bet they have an extra horse for him as they begin to swarm the northeast expanse and move to attack the northern Italian recruit on the north end of the Roman picket line. So this is the initial Roman missile fire, and we will start in the southeast, where the south tower on the East Alesia plain disrupts both units with his range 1 fire. His hits at outer ranges are to be disregarded here, but will manifest as 2 6/6s on the loss ledger. North to the Twin Towers, and the reprobate West Tower misses again at range 3. So Sister Right takes out the 7/6 there. Sweet. Couple of hexes north, there are 3 Balearic Slinger units, and that's a lot of rocks. They eliminate a 7/6 and disrupt an 8/6 there. The 2 archers to the west are able to eliminate a 7/6 on the river. And the tower on the slope to the east disrupts a 6/6 at range 1. Missile units under Labienus also let loose, and on the river they are able to eliminate an 8/6. At the angle, the slinger knocks out a 7/6 there. The tower just east of Labienus is cut off, but is still manned, and it holds its fire to wait for a flow of movement across its effective range. Zooming out to view the broader battlefield, and the Gauls execute their move. Looking to the north, and the lesser outer forces are, you guessed it, shifting east. Forces north of Labienus are there to contain his ambitions in that direction. But the cavalry inside the ramparts must prepare for a last stand. They will help assault the fort on the river, and that fort chooses a target and eliminates a 6/6 at range 1. Roman missile fire for the turn is done, and here are the losses for the Gauls. From that tower, and looking east, we see the Gallic cavalry is coalescing around the mothership, where things are looking good. On the east end, we can see the screen on the Roman cohorts there, with attacks planned on both of their ends. Ooh. Moving south, and the planned assault on the fort there will be hampered by disruptions. But around that area, the Gallic screens are comprehensive and in-depth. The trailing Alesia forces are leaving the inner plain, and they own that river line running north. And on the Gallic flanks, their movement is one of disengagement. So there are only 3 attacks by the Gauls here. They are assaulting the tower on the river north, and there are 2 attacks on the ends of the Roman picket line east. The Gauls execute their attack, and we go to the fort on the river north, where the Romans have only a single German mercenary cavalry, who is defending at strength 4. The attack comes in at 6-1, and the Gauls have finally destroyed a 3rd fort. 1,400 warriors move in to the target hex. East to the top end of the Roman screen, where 5 Gallic units converge on the 9th cohort of the northern Italian recruits, and that is another 6-1, which automatically results in the Roman cohort being eliminated and the Gauls being able to advance forward. Now on the south side, they were only able to achieve a melee result, and on that fort on the slope, they decide not to attack. Those units are on the crest of the hill, and they are happy with that. And here are the losses in the Gallic attack phase on turn 10. It's move 10 for the Roman player, and the situation looks grim. But this is a full playthrough of the game, and no one is conceding early. The Roman player will press against the Gauls where he can, and cause as many enemy casualties as he can at those points, and missile units will move up, hoping to hit more Gauls as they move in turn 11. In the south, we can see their projected move. They are moving against a 5-6 way down on the end. Above that, they intend to overwhelm the disrupted Gallic units still inside the ramparts. And for the Gallic units north on the river, it's just containment, as they can't do much there. To Caesar's forces north of the river, the Romans are attacking vulnerable units on the front edge of Vercingetorix's screen. And over to Labienus on the plateau, and it's much the same. He's going to hit the trapped cavalry, and his forces left are actually attacking west to hit a 5-6. The Romans now execute their move, and they can see what's happening ahead of them, and they're really pissed off. There are 11 attacks in all. In the southeast, the attack on the 5-6 on the hill is a little cut off, but the Romans get a 6-1 odds there, and push further north. On the rampart, the 2 disrupted Gallic 7-6s are wiped out. Up to the river, and the Romans find success there as well, knocking out 2 6-6s who could not retreat. North of that, the Romans attacking up the hill get a defender route 1. And now to Caesar, where it's 4-1 odds on 1,300 Gauls, and it's attacker advance 1, defender route 3, with the defenders unable to retreat. The attack just west on a Gaul 7-6 results in attacker advance 2 and defender route 4, and he goes flying off back. Looking to Labienus now, where he eliminates a 5-6 on the rampart and moves in. The attack on his right also succeeds, and another 500 Gauls go down. West now, and the Romans eliminate 500 more. And now back to the long running battle rages down there, and the Romans finally break the 2 valiant Gallic 4-6s there. What a stand. So here are the losses that occurred at the end of the Roman combat phase, and that's about 6,500 Gauls. Turn 11 begins, and we can see Vercingetorix's position. And the first event is Vercingetorix moving 8 hexes due east, and that is just enough to get him off the map, denying any Roman missile fire, and the battle is over. The Gallic players have won the game, and Vercingetorix rides off into the dusk, or maybe to a limousine down the other side of the hill. Who knows? Either way, it's evident that the Gauls really were pale green. And here are the total losses for the game. A staggering amount of losses for the Gauls, but those losses perhaps were the cost of victory here. And that concludes the presentation. I hope you found it interesting and enjoyable. I enjoyed making it. It was a lot of hard work. As for myself, I am due for a break, but it won't be long before I'm up in my attic again, looking for more old war games.